like how do you bring in like positive male role models for like men and boys? Because like I've been reading some of the reports from like schools in the US and in the UK about kind of like the rise in classroom misogyny, not just at like peers, but at teachers and all this type of stuff. And I don't know, like for me, it's just like, it just seems to be just going like crazy. And the version of manhood that's being pushed at them is like unrealistic. Like to be like this whole situation of like the alpha beta Andrew Tate situation. Like I know that you get the you're a beta cook, you are. You're and then they don't realize the irony in that statement of, if you're an alpha in their definition, that means that you lead and you do things by yourself, not by yourself, but you lead people to do stuff. But you're paying 40 quid a month
exactly
to else to tell you how to be a brand for you. Then
I know. But remember, it's like it's like myopia, isn't it? And delusions of grandeur. You get that. So I realize that afflicts a lot of people. So I just take it as it comes.
Oh, I definitely take that type of stuff. But for me, and why I started kind of like my community investing was because I think it was something that we spoke about the last time. Actually, it was about the fact that there are no services for men. Like, and on the statistics for it, I was looking at it, and like men drop off so fast off that list. Like if they have to wait for a period of time, they'll drop off. And there's no statistics on whether they drop off. That's because they've given up, feel better, or take a more serious action kind of thing. And I just thought like it's a very easy platform to create. Like having an online community is very easy for men because a lot of them are in that environment already. Like they're in that cocooned sort of situation. And so the hope is that kind of like aligning and working with people like you and other groups, it gives men a space to kind of like find out that they're not doing this by themselves.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
That like your feelings of kind of like custody battles or rejection or loneliness it's unique to you, but it's not a unique problem in general. There's always someone that's had a similar experience that can help you and that type of thing. And that's the message that I'm trying to push, is that you're not doing this by yourself for this.
Yeah, of course. That's fun enough. You see the fella that just left half an hour ago, he wants to do some kind of production and pitch it to Amazon. I said, you sure? He said, about what? He said, about our experiences, because he said, I saw you on the social work and the mentor and the baby father podcast, and said, I think we need to film because a lot of people are isolated and working in silos. So I said, that's interesting, especially that I said, you're still doing the bus driving and that. He said, yeah, I resonate so much with your story, and there's a lot of similarities to my own. And then I know a lot of people fall off the wagon and they're on their own, and there's no real support. So he said, I know sometimes it's not always from people not wanting to help, but some people feel ashamed or embarrassed and that they kind of lock themselves away.
Mate, from all of the research that I've done and my own experiences and the bits that you've experienced from me with my depressions and my moods, I think there's that thing that like when like you've got kids that like there's like seems to be a separation in the research when like if you've got a boy and a girl, when they get to about 4, they start to diverge. Girls get told to talk about their feelings more. Don't cry, don't do, and that kind of resonates. And I'm the person that would say like I'm 100% empathetic, but when those things start, I still do the same thing. I'm still a victim of that mentality. So like, well, I won't bother someone. I'll just keep quiet. It'll pass soon. It won't, like, it's not a problem. I don't want to be a problem for you, like kind of thing.
Yeah, because remember, there's some of that empathy that they talk about, especially with the services. Some of it is just it's like tick box culture. They don't want to be seen to be terrible and abusive. At the same time, they want you to get on with it because there's a bottom line and you need to function and life goes on.
Yeah.
You've seen it. Tony Blair's been doing that lately. Have you noticed? He said this mental health epidemic has got out of hand. Some people now are saying they've got mental health issues just from the normal stresses of life.
Yeah. Well,
it's as if some of the fit. And I said, you're supposed to be a progressive man, a liberal.
No. But the thing is, like when you look at kind of like mental health, and like I've studied this a lot, it's kind of like you look at the standard of living and how it's changed. and like the pressures that are on people now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm supporting this project kind of like out of my own like part-time salary while I try to do both things. And like how do you like get your bills? Like your rent is like 60% of your salary.
Yeah, exactly.
And then everything else is like increasing their prices because they feel that they need to. And yeah, like so like at what point is enough like and I'm not surprised you got mental health problems. You got a loneliness epidemic in men because disposable income's being driven down. You're being driven to stay online for connection, and that connection then is manipulated by algorithms, feelings, and then what happens in those like search, like when you start to search and look for stuff. Because I think that's the thing. I think a lot of men would seek help, but they don't want to. I don't think their first step is wanting to do it face to face. I think that's where they feel the shame. If like I'm talking to you and I say, "Hey man, look, I can't like handle life," I think they're worried that your response would be, "Well, you don't have a choice, mate. Get on with it." Like, so I see that kind of like AI and like the internet is kind of like, I think, a man's first stepping stone into wellness, mental health protection. I think.
Yeah, it's a shield. Yeah, of course. It's just like escape from reality.
Yeah, I think it's that.
Mechanism.
Yeah, I think it's that question that they ask of like, say, ChatGTP, and they say, "Why do I feel so lonely?" But where if you put that into Google, it's going to start to like shift you in a different way. That's not to say that AI doesn't do that as well, but Google's algorithm is going to show you the highest responses to that type of question and that type of thing. And so, yeah, it's like the stepping stone and the challenge for me, and I think for a lot of men's help, is how do you get them to ask when it's, for a man, it's quite a scary thing to say, "Hey man, I need some help from you."
It's true. You see this thing. I've noticed that in especially I used to work for the YMCA, and they kind of deal with that. Well, obviously not extensive advanced mental health, but you know, like kind of like mental health first aid issues like depression. They signpost to services that might help them in like talking therapy about, you know, being overly stressed, or maybe, you know, a parental alienation with their children. So from that, I can tell that it's increasing, especially with the child maintenance service scandals as well. They're saying that a lot of people that have paid maintenance is increasing male suicide because, you know, 9 out of 10 family single parent homes are chaired by women. So with the men involved in such a minimal rate, they're saying they're basically being cut off, and that's added to the mental health epidemic, as well as the economic reasons with employment. You know, the downturn, people are finding it hard to get jobs. Skilled jobs are, you know, being replaced, as you said, with AI. Even I used to work at Meta, and in 2022, they made a major cutback on software developers, software engineers. I said, my goodness, I never thought technology, like AI people, would actually ever lose their kind of job like that once they're programming coding. But they said, no, the AI is so good now, they code better than humans. So I said, yeah, we don't have to keep them on board because it's more efficient and it helps the bottom line. And then they're scrambling around trying to find alternative income, and they're struggling. I thought, with your education, computer science, engineering, how is that possible? And then the social problems as well, with obviously interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, I see the interpersonal relationship like situation as kind of like, it's like systemic. Like, I don't know if you remember, so like going back to like when I was at uni, so like 2005-ish, like if we wanted something, we would predominantly go to that shop, wouldn't we? So you'd go into a shop, say like Curry's or something, and you'd want to buy a computer or whatnot, and they'd say, "Hey, actually, don't buy it from here. Go and do it online because you'll save 10% or whatever it happens."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, every time you went there, they were like, "No, don't do it here. Go online because you'll save money." And then everyone's gone online, and now people don't need the high street as such anymore. There are still needs for like,
of course, definitely, it's reduced, far reduced.
And everyone's been pushed to that now. So like in my depressions, I don't have to go out. Like, I can get food delivered to me. I can get what I need. I can talk to people if I want to talk to them. And it kind of like, you can stay in that bubble where you don't have to have physical or like face-to-face interactions with people, and it's very easy to not have them now. Like if you think of like lockdown and stuff, that people were communicating like this for work, with families and partners and relationships, and because it happened for like so long, it kind of became normal, I think, for like kids coming through that period of, well, FaceTime is fine.
Yeah, definitely. You're right.
FaceTime is,
my kids' schools were doing that. They were doing that.
Yeah.
Having lessons conducted over video call, Google Meet, Zoom, Teams.
Yeah, because like at the time, obviously important for that to happen, but it's also dragged on into some university courses where they don't have to attend certain lectures in person. They can just do it from home, which for convenience is fine. But again, like you're cutting out that human contact part. Like the interaction that we're having now is great, but it'd be different if you're face to face.
Yeah, definitely.
No, like that physical presence of being with someone is completely different to kind of like having this, and this like relieve some of that psychological stress by being able to have a conversation with someone and see another person.
Seeing them face to face.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily. For me, I think that men have become disconnected from that because hanging out with their mates in the bars and the pubs like we used to, they probably are now doing it more online like this,
they are.
And that type of thing. And so you see this rising, especially like in the incel communities, of this anger. But I wouldn't say it's self-inflicted, but when your life's online and you're not prepared to go outside, how do you expect to make that traverse, to have a relationship, to have a physical relationship with someone, if you don't make any effort to get into that situation? And then they feel that the situation that they're in is because women make them do that, when it's actually within their power to make that change. But they become like, it's like a bit of learned helplessness. They don't see a way for them to make a solution, so it must be somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
I think if you look at any sort of oppression, it's a similar thing, is that once you find someone to blame for your situation, you don't have to take any responsibility for it.
Which is terrible, to be fair. It's terrible, but that's the way things are going.
Yeah,
especially with the rise of technology.
And I think that's the thing, is that polarization you see, especially in America, is that like there isn't a middle ground. You're like, you're right or you're left, and there is no one really in the center as such. I'll change that. Actually, I would say the people in the center are people who are happy and content. Like they're not.
They don't complain. They don't speak about these things online.
They may have issues with it, but I'd say generally they're content with their life and how it is, so they don't have any problems with it. But then you get the people at the other side shout, and that dictates how relationships are then carried out.
Of course, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's the truth. That's the truth. Because like when you're content, and that I notice those are the people that don't go online and speak about the relationships or complain or anything. So that's why, and like you said, the noisy minority online then becomes the dominant voice.
Yeah.
And then it attracts people that said, "Oh, I resonate with that. It's their fault. They're no good. They don't help me. I struggle to interact."
I don't have to take responsibility for this because it's women as a general thing. It's their fault.
Far removed from me.
So I'm now helpless in this situation because I can't control women as a group. So therefore, I'm stuck in this oppressed little bubble. And then people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson pop up in there and go, "Aha! I will sell you the solution to this problem." And that's the bit that I want to break, is that they're not selling you any solution. They're just reinforcing the fact that you're angry and you're lonely and you're upset. That's the only thing that's being reinforced.
And they're making money from it as well.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I've tried to make most of this service as free as possible. Like, so the group sessions will be free. It'll only be the one-to-one stuff that they would pay as you go because of like trying to like time and that type of thing. But group sessions will be free, and that's what I'm hoping will bring people in, that they see you and you say, "Hey, well, this is what happened to me in my life," and someone else goes, "Oh, that's what's happening to me. I'm not by myself in this situation." And I'm not saying to you, well, if you give me 50 quid, I'll give you the answer to that.
Yeah, cool.
To that question.
No. I know, but obviously once I've seen from Andrew Tate, once the cam business went out of line, basically the digital pimping, I noticed that's when he went into this kind of manosphere and said, listen, if you want to be successful, this is what you need to do. You need to mimic what I'm doing instead of sitting at home being a loser.
But that's the key thing, though. Mimic what I'm doing. Not be this alpha leader like special forces soldiers and all of these people that like take the initiative and follow, like lead and do. They don't follow that. They just say, mimic me.
Yeah. Of course. Because the way he sees it, said, look, I've got the things that you want. Popularity.
Yes.
Attractive to many women because I've made loads of money.
Yep. And
I'm strong and fit. Yeah, that's the whole idea.
If you give me 50 quid, I will now show you how to be strong and successful. And it's a bit like I see it as like, have you heard of like the evangelicals with like seeding?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Mega preachers will be like, I need a jumbo jet, so if you give me money, then Jesus will reward you with it in the future.
I came up in that kind of church.
It's the same grift that goes on. You don't get an answer. You're just like, well, you need to pay for the next week. Okay, I'll pay for the next week. I'll pay for the next year. I'll pay for the next 10 years.
And then so they have a different trick with that, though. They said, we're taking care of your spiritual development. Don't focus too much on the material.
Yeah.
Because your reward will be in heaven. To be fair, it's almost medieval, because remember, that's what the dukes and the royalty used to do with the serfs. So when in the Middle Ages, so it's all they do is remix it and repackage it. It's just basically based on the same principles.
Same con all the way along. It's the bit where it's a bit kind of like in like theatre where they'll start and like suspend your disbelief, and that's what it is. So I'm a pastor. I want a jumbo jet. I tell you to send me $100, but you're in debt, and I say I'll get rid of your debt. Common sense would say if I keep the $100, I can pay off the debt.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But the promise of Jesus paying your debt is much greater than the dollars that you need.
Of course. It's, to be fair, it's almost like coercive control.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm only going to give you the answer if you give me the money.
And a lot of the time,
maybe that is the exactly perfect way to describe it. Actually, that it is a coercive control relationship. Like it's financial abuse,
emotional abuse,
and you're being gaslit along the whole way.
Exactly. Being gaslit. Jesus. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, there were times that we didn't have these terminologies in mainstream public to actually know what was going on. We just thought, oh, what's happening there? For some reason, I'm not getting what I expect from this, but I guess I just have to keep, because everyone's doing it. And there's no one really diagnosing the problem. And the minority that did in those times, they marginalized them and said they're of the devil. Or they're trying to lead the flock astray.
Yep. How dare you have an alternate opinion to what's going on? Slavery is something that's always happened and always will. There is no other alternative to it. We're going to take your land, and you don't have a choice about it. This is how it's always been. And when someone turns up and says, "Actually, no, that's not the case at all," what you want about? They kill
heresy.
Yeah.
You're a heretic.
Yeah,
off their head, hang them. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you look back to like the witch burnings and stuff like that. That predominantly the witches that were burnt were women. And it was probably because women had an alternate opinion to what kind of like the mainstream was. And they were kind of like, well, if we get rid of the women, we solve that problem and keep the narrative progressing.
That's why they have their executions. Yeah, definitely.
It's the same with the Spanish Inquisition along the way as well.
Exactly.
The Spanish Inquisition, I found out one fact about it, which I kind of I love, and it's also pretty terrible. So kind of like tapas and Spanish hospitality. I was like, hey, welcome to the thing. Here's like tapas with your drink and your food. That was actually like the first step of the Inquisition, because
serious?
Yeah. So when you would come to like my town in Spain, like maybe you're a Moor from the Muslim and stuff, and I said to you, hey, here's some sliced pig. Would you like sliced pig? And you went, no, I don't want them. They would then go to the Spanish Inquisition, and then you're likely to be picked up and have a conversation with. It was kind of like a way to death. So just imagine if you just weren't hungry, and you're absolutely 100% Catholic, you just weren't hungry at that moment.
Jesus, you see,
it's that kind of thing that you see all of these things of kind of like just something simple like that, for example, of offering hospitality, but then there's that flip side to it of, well, if you don't take my hospitality, there's something wrong with you. So
you're not one of us. Yeah, you're not one of us.
Yeah, if you have a different view to me, then there's something wrong with you. And we're seeing that now. If you just look at Parliament Square over the weekend and the absolute travesty with all of that type of things, you see that taking place.
And to be fair, the Palestine action stuff, when that you see the pensioners they were arresting,
Yeah,
like actually physically apprehending them.
Over 80s.
Jesus.
And I mean, Christ, let's be honest, they're the worst, aren't they? Like, I mean, with a placard sitting down with a disability, scumbags, absolute scumbags.
And to be fair, they're just enforcing basically government rule. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're saying we're condemning it. We're condemning it over in that we're going to look for a two-state solution. But yet you're doing these kind of things openly in broad daylight. I don't know how they combine the two. I don't know how they can think that is credible.
It's cognitive dissonance at its best. I think that I was talking to someone about kind of like the nature of this, and it's kind of like when Orwell wrote 1984 as a warning of what would happen.
Yeah, George Orwell, I remember that.
People were just like, this is actually a really good blueprint for kind of like taking control of what's going on. So some people saw the warning and others saw it as a blueprint to take control. Because I'm like, as you probably know, like, I've always been against the Palestine situation ever since as a little kid. So I've got
same with me.
So I've got a patch that says "Free Palestine, end the occupation." And then the other day, I was kind of like, I had it on the back of my cap when I was just in town, and I could see people looking at me, and I was just like, "Oh, I wonder if." And then I started doing a bit of research. That the nature of the prescription of them, because of the symbols that they used, were obviously generic because they're not. Well, best be careful with how we describe it. They haven't got a target for their terror, but because of their things were so broad, you can basically be stopped if you've got a flag and someone thinks that you can be stopped under the terror laws on the street and investigated for it. Even though I don't support them, kind of now that they've been prescribed. Yeah, just having a patch or a badge, and they think someone thinks you can still be stopped under the Terror Act. And
yeah, of course. Now, to be fair, the reason why, because have you noticed there's a lot of Zionist Jews that have been complaining, said basically it's in support of terrorism, Hamas. I said, how's that so?
Yeah.
Most of the citizens of Gaza and West Bank, Palestine, they're not Hamas politicians or affiliates. So how would you? I said, how is women being bombed and killed, children being murdered and bullet? How do you? And then like you said, the cognitive dissonance and the deflection said, well, October the 7th, 2023, this is what happened. They seized, citizens, Jewish citizens, and they took hostages and they made terrorist attacks. So they're always using that as a thing to justify what they're doing, and that basically only defending their territory. And there's a conspiracy of Arab Palestinians that they actually want to kill all Israelites or the Jews. So that's how they managed to keep that dynamic about, we can still basically do what we want.
I think
they're supported by the West. They're supported by the West.
100%. And I think the worst thing was, so when the chant of from the river to the sea, and that was said that that's a genocidal thing, that you want to wipe out this stuff. And then Netanyahu this week has been discussing the Greater Israel Project. And the Greater Israel Project.
He's had that project for years. Yeah. It's just that he's becoming more emboldened by what's going on there because of the back at you.
So now what he's saying is, if in the Greater Israel Project requires pretty much half of Saudi Arabia, most of Syria, large chunks of Jordan and Egypt, and what he's saying is like, well, if God said this, we can carry on. And it's just, I just don't understand that mentality for me of like a 3,000-year-old text grants the rights of a bunch of people that were actually there.
Yeah, no, before. No, but that still goes on because fun enough, I discussed it with one of my Nigerian friends that I grew up with the other day, and because of the Christian background, I said obviously we both went to church, and he's saying it's ordained, it shows you in the Bible. I said, yeah, but think about it, what you're saying. It says, so if God ordained me now, I said that I got a vision from him, a revelation saying that I must take over your house, move you and your mum out, and it said it's my house and you have to live on the street, you would fight me every tooth and nail, wouldn't you? He said, sure, that can't work. And that's only when I said that, he said, I never thought about it like that. I said, yeah, you can't get bogged down by doctrine and dogma just because you've grown up being taught that. So think about it morally and principally. How could that actually work? So it's like when the Germans in the Second World War said they're going to conquer Europe, they're going to come to England and said Churchill got the tanks out, the big speeches, making pacts with America to push them back. And so then the other allies. So Said, and what I'd find unbelievable is that this is within living memory. So you got reference. It's not like 500 years ago where it's ancient pound of weak history and there's no video footage or proof of it, it's apart from words in the book. We've got living memory and recorded history, ocular proof, and they can't see, well, you know, they're basically fighting what we was fighting before.
On that note, the thing that like riles me is that you hear all these people and they talk about Churchill and they talk about all of the stuff that he did, and then you see them outside of an immigration hotel hiling, which was the exact reason why he went to war to stop that from happening, because he recognized how dangerous it was.
Yeah.
And now, maybe not my granddad didn't fight in the war, but like people's grandparents and great grandparents all died to stop that. And now these people are doing that, thinking that that's what it was about. My biggest fear about that is that when the last of the veterans die, the narrative starts to change.
Yeah, of course it will, because the state will be able to command their...
The witnesses are gone now. The witnesses
so they can't... No, that wasn't true. I was there. I saw. Exactly.
And that's where the next like step of Orwellianism comes in. Like in 1984, they talk about the memory hole, where they burn whatever they change. So they take whatever bit of history, they burn it and replace it with something different.
Something different, yeah. That happens all the time.
And that's the biggest fear for me, is that what that war was fought for becomes a propaganda piece for a Trump-like administration.
We defeat our enemies. We're the victor. God was on our side. That's why we won. Yeah, that's always the thing.
Because reform promises you how good the past was, when there were no black or brown people. You know, you could leave your doors open. There was never, ever a problem. So reform promises the past, but no one promises us a future at the moment. There's just this vacant thing. So, but yeah, seeing them hide outside of hotels and claim that they're British while doing something that is very, very un-British.
Against the values, against the values. I know, that's why I laugh. Yeah, so the tolerance, what happened to that? That's a British value. Yeah, so
inclusivity, like one of the things that people don't understand is that ever since the Middle Ages and before, from the Romans as well, is that the UK has always been a place of migration.
Yeah, of course.
And so, like the narrative of like I'm 100% British.
Where
are you drawing the line? Are you drawing that line from like your parents, or are we going back? Because if we go back, we are definitely Roman and French. And
but you know what? Because obviously I use that analogy regular in that example, but the way they see that's beyond living memory, and that's so ancient, it's not worth mentioning. That's how people. That's how they cut that off. That's what they do, and politicians do all the time.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, it's not in living memory, so it's changed. And that's the bit that worries me about kind of like the narratives over history. That then like the empire, what obviously is written and what's now, kind of like contradicting that, and the Second World War and all of these things that were important. How do they become manipulated? Like you look at America now, and Black history is being erased. Arab culture within America is being changed. American, like Native Americans, have been erased, and it's kind of like America is and always was white. But actually, we sent them on. Well, they sent themselves on a boat.
But you always think. Do you think it's because the power dynamic, and obviously the government in charge and the cooperative powers, they're frightened of change or retribution for injustices and misdeeds of the past? But that's what I always wonder. Is it a bit of fear there that said, oh, we've done all these things before, and if we empower these people or give them parity, they might come and reverse that, and we'll be the victims.
Yeah, I do think.
Or we'll be pushed out of the land and we'll be conquered.
I think when it comes to like that side of things, I think that when you look at like the people who left on the Mayflower and went to America, they felt like they were persecuted in the UK.
That's why they left.
They were persecuted, but essentially we can say that they were British. So they then go to America with that same fear of persecution, and then enact that kind of like violence as self-defense. Then before they do me kind of mentality, kind of like they took, I think, a British empirical attitude to America, and it just went haywire in a completely different way. And yes, I do think that the reluctance to change is a bit like reform, because if you change it, it's going to be different, and if different doesn't necessarily mean good.
Good, yeah, so that's right.
As we are, and you can be happy within that little sphere, and we'll keep grinding down and making money. I think that the past is promised as kind of like a band-aid, I think.
Yeah, it is a band-aid. It is a band-aid, but over arterial wounds.
Yeah, you're spewing blood big time, and you're hemorrhaging, but you're like, I'm all right. I'll just keep popping another one of these. Things will be okay.
Exactly.
It's a gaping wound, but we'll be fine. We'll just keep sticking.
Definitely.
But I just think that the fear is change, because there's no guarantee. So with like the new party that started, and they're saying we're going to do this, we're going to tax the rich, and we're going to do that. That will create fear in kind of like the centrists, because what happens if they all go? If we take their money, do they take their jobs?
That's right.
And what we forget is that we're the 99%. There's more of us. They need us.
Of course. That's why I always tell people. Said the amount of normal public citizens there are. Said we outnumber every government department, institution, the army put together. But the way remember, a lot of it's, like you said, psychological profiling. So keep you distracted. With, the day-to-day lives, having to be work for money, which is not worth toilet paper. Separate people so we don't get large groups that could potentially oppose us. We get the fight amongst us, so divide and conquer. It's a colonial tactic, and it's remixed again and again, generation to generation.
But it just changes its style. So newspapers would segregate people and put them into camps and divide them. And I think that's the problem with the left, is the left spends so much time fracturing itself about who is more moral and just and right. They forget about the simple unified message that's put out on the other side of, do you like this, yes or no? If you don't like it, well, we can change it.
We can change
it. Else is like, you use this word and I find that word derogatory, so your group is a terrible group. Again, they agree on 99% of
the things, I know, but that divides them.
1% they decide that they're not, they don't want to be involved with each other. And that is, and now the algorithms do it, and search engines do it, and social media splits people into groups. And you see that like in football. I think it's probably like the simplest, I would say, religion, but that's probably quite controversial thing. But again, you pick your side, and then you automatically, there's animosity towards your side. Like Tottenham, like there's an ingrained part of me as an Arsenal fan that I don't like Tottenham, but inherently I've got nothing against Tottenham. Like I've got nothing against them other than the fact that they aren't my football team.
Of course. Yeah, it's tribal. So to be fair, I think a lot of it, from what I've seen, is the identity. People want to identify with something that is sacred and that is bigger than them. And that's what causes a lot of the fracture and then the hatred. And it's with a passion as well. So anyone that is not with me is against me. And that's when you get that. That's where you get that real hatred.
Yeah, and that's where the hope thing, that there isn't any hope. There isn't an alternative option for us. We think, like collectively, that billionaires are essential to our lives. And like,
they're not.
I was looking into like the immigration figures to do with like the small boats and the situation around that, about like how did all of a sudden did we have no boats and all of a sudden lots and lots of boats? And so I was looking at the Tory policies of them grinding down the safe passages for different groups of people to be able to come to the UK, to turn up at Border Patrol, to be accepted or rejected, and like you're under management of that. But that all got shut down, and then the boats started turning up. And then there was one Tory donor, I think his name is Christopher King. He got awarded a contract for his company for 966 million. Before that, his company was like a housing company and stuff like that, and was making about 50 or 60 million a year. Not even on the Times Rich list, nowhere near. So Times Rich list, you start at around 350 million personal wealth, nowhere near that. All of a sudden we get to 2021, is that they're on the rich list with 750 million, and then on 2024 he's got over $1 billion. So my question is, what the hell has happened there? Because to go from 1 million to 1 billion is
huge. Of course, massive difference.
1 million is what has taken place to get to 1 billion. And how have you done that within, maybe he had a couple of 100 million, let's say, given the upper limit, he's got a couple of 100 million already personal wealth. But in 5 years, that's gone to 1 billion on a contract that's 966 million. And you just see that and you just think, the reason that the immigration situation is happening is because it's profitable.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. Of course it is. And obviously, as much as government don't like saying it, Labour. Because I used to have a facilities job in Deutsche Bank. And at the time, they were in bed with the Tories D. This is like 10, 11 years ago. And I said, how comes you represent politicians that come here when you have your, nice events, when, they have wine and cheese and they look at the artwork in the lobby there. On Winchester Avenue, they used to have it, the premises. I said, but then a lot of the cleaners, South American, African, like the Philippines. So I said, well, how does that work? He said, oh, Sean, we fun enough. I don't know if he'd been drinking, because I was surprised he was so candid with me. He said, immigrants work harder, Sean, and they work for less. We can't say this publicly because how it looks. He said, and we'll lose, our natural support base. That's the whole idea. Yeah. So he said, we want more. And then I looked at the policies. It's true, because the policy they have is like when Tories are getting after Labour now. Said you was in charge for nearly 15 years. Yeah. So how can you say when immigration grew under your government as well?
Yeah, I want to caveat the fact that I despise this Labour government. Like, it doesn't represent any of the values that I have for them. But yeah, the immigration numbers that they're being thrown at the moment are unfair, because it's kind of like, if you look at their figures, which is part of what I was looking at, they've actually, whether justifiably, have removed more than the Tories did.
Yeah, I know. I saw the interview when Keir Starmer was with Trump, and he mentioned those figures of how, as a part of his thing, that he kept his promise, and he said he would reduce, illegal immigration.
And he has.
Yeah, so, and he's saying it openly, standing next to Trump with full chest, with not a hint of embarrassment or like, oh, is this against actually Labour values? There's no thing.
Somewhere
like
between 2020 and 2024, they vanished, and I'm not quite sure how they disappeared, but they vanished somehow.
No, but you notice a lot of politicians do that. They make election promises in their manifesto, knowing that it's popular, and they will probably get them into power. And once they're in power, it always seems to be a different mindset, and they abandon a lot of their pledges. And I always wonder, is it the corporate machine behind them paying them, or saying, if you do try to make these changes, we'll make sure you're out, or we'll expose you in some kind of scandal? Yeah. So they think, you know what, since I've stressed myself to win this position of authority and power, and I've got a short lifespan, I might as well make as much of it as I can. And I forget about all those things, because those little people, they can't help me. And then if I'm richer and that, I can go off and live my life after my term in office and be better off.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing at the moment, is that our government are millionaires, and in the previous one were billionaires. So how do they relate to me as a person with mental health problems, who is sometimes in and out of work based on kind of like, how does a billionaire like reconcile that type of situation? How do like millionaires within Parliament, like, who are making vast sums of money, as we found out from housing and things like that? So where does this, like, where do we kind of like draw a line? Because they're not working for us anymore. And that's why I'm behind this new party coming in. Like, even if nothing happens, at least there's an opportunity for a change to take place. And what happens, doesn't it? Kind of like
funny enough, do you think that Corbyn party led by Zara Sultana, do you think they will be able to be an effective challenge to reform? I don't think they will get more votes or support reform.
From kind of like psychology and like economics, I kind of see it like this. If you think about the Conservatives and Labour, what are they offering working class people? Well, Labour have strict disability benefits for most people. They're trying to force people back into work, and some of them probably can, and I'd say a majority of them probably can't. But there's this thing that they're trying to be tough on benefits and cutting the costs. They found the £22 billion hole.
And they've doubled it already.
Yeah, and instead of making the people with the money who created that problem, like Christopher King, who made his billions from it, instead of asking them to fill the hole, they threw in the elderly. So now, if you look at those two parties, what are they offering working class people? Nothing. What are Reform offering working class people? Well, they're offering them a change. They're offering them an absolute difference. They're being told that they're going to be put first and they're going to have all of these changes.
No, they won't be.
I don't believe that. But if you put yourself in a situation if you had to pick a party, like if we took kind of like the left and right situation out of it, and we just put the mandates in front of you now, if you had two parties that said I'm going to punish you, and one party that says I'm going to put you first, what party are you voting for? You're going for the one that puts you first. And if there is,
that's the human nature. Yeah, that's the human nature. But again, it's divide and conquer.
Yeah, but if one side is offering working class people a change that, you know, their lives can get better, you know, they're giving them excuses for why their lives are poor, but they're giving them an opportunity that this can get better. But the other two are squabbling for the same group of people. While the Labour original base has been abandoned. Do I think they could effectively charge? I think that they could put Labour under a lot of pressure and force them into a coalition. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they can. Yeah,
I think that they would put them under a lot of pressure. I saw a couple of things like Wes Streeting. So he only managed to get in by about 500 votes. I think it was Liane Mohammed, who ran as an independent, took him to 500 votes and 3 recounts. And they projected his seat, and now he would lose significantly to this new party. And then,
I saw one about even Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, that they said a Corbyn Sultana party. Have they got an official name yet?
They having an autumn, like an autumn kind of a general assembly, and that's when they're going to decide names and policies and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they said that their representatives would make Starmer lose his seat. So I said that's shocking.
But just think,
just been in the power just over a year.
Yeah, but just think about the amount of anger that is there now. So you've got the people that kind of like of reform, and they've taken their kind of like side at the moment. You've got a group of people that I think have gone to that way because they're offering something different. But the abandoned side of Labour, and what I've seen online is a lot of this, they're not like huge political parties like the Communist Party and the anarchist parties and some of those smaller groups that have probably only got like 100 members or so. But they're like, right, this time we're putting our differences aside and we're joining this side of movement. And so I think that that's a big shift, that if people like put their differences and settle on what they agree about, and if they disagree with this policy of punishing the elderly, the working class, and anyone else, I think that they can capitalize on that. And I think that if they take over the councils between now and the next election and do a better job than reform councils and change their communities, I think that the grassroots side of that will be more dangerous to Labour. The Tories have shot themselves in the foot, in my opinion. They've put themselves in a little box, and Reform are chewing into their base already.
Yeah, of course they will do, because the way they're saying they represent traditional conservative values.
And then you've got another bunch of the Conservatives who don't like what they've done, and they've taken a step to Labour. And so the Conservative base is just being hammered and shrunk all the time.
Yeah,
so I think they're kind of like nothing party now. I think unless someone very charismatic and appears from somewhere, I don't think Kemi Badenoch is that person for them.
Yeah, they might. I heard rumblings they might return to Boris again, because they said he could.
Wouldn't surprise me.
He could sell oil to a pensioner.
Yeah, and then that would then be interesting for Reform, because he aligns quite a lot with their views. So he could buy back Conservative Party.
I remember he's got a likability factor.
Yeah.
Much as they say people think he's a buffoon, he's charismatic.
Yep.
And look, he increased the Tory share and ended the coalition when he took over. So,
and it's one of the things that I like. I don't know if I said this to you last time, that we vote political leaders who we would not vote to manage our companies.
Exactly.
So like, if you look at the sociopaths that we vote in to be a leader because we think that, you know, being strong and all that is an important factor for it, I wouldn't let them near my company. Unless it was a money-making company and it was like pure profit-driven, but I wouldn't let them be in charge of like social housing.
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not.
Else. I wouldn't let them anywhere near it. And yeah,
that's the thing, because when I look, you remember that I forget his name now, but the journalist that made the Back to 45 documentary. What was his name? Ken? Oh, I forget his name now. Back to 45. And they were part of the 38 campaign as well. And I said, how is it that we managed to do that then? Increase the wealth and opportunity for working people. Almost universal social housing. And the economy didn't collapse. I said about yes, I said what's changed in the last like 70, 80 years? Why is things that can't work anymore? But I said, oh, that's the old economics that can never work in modern society. The power cuts in the 70s where there's regulated, you couldn't have electricity, and things like that because the striking of the mine is a thing. Like, so yeah, but I said that we had to have a 4-day working week because of it. Yeah, ration it. So yeah, but they said, but then I said, but you say all that, but the toys came in, and then you had it all sold off. Then you had the boom and bust of the yuppie era. I never forget when my parents bought their first house, and they had Black Sunday and there was a European exchange, and then the interest rates went to 15%, and my parents had negative equity on their house, and then, like it was terrible.
Yeah.
And even though John Major turned it round, they said, but you've decimated, the social housing stock you've sold off for people, you've not replaced it. So I knew from then the housing crisis eventually would blow up because the house price is only going up and up, and then wages don't go up in line with it.
Yeah, the warning signs. It's a bit like what you said earlier. So there's two things for me: absolute power corrupts absolutely, and there was a sketch by Bill Hicks when he talks about people coming into power. Like they come in with their manifesto, and then they get there, and then behind the curtain is one person who's puppeteering both groups and telling what can and can't be done.
I always wondered that, but you know they're telling you it's conspiracy for sure. Yeah. I always said it must be, because how can you be like that and then turn around and say you're not doing any of those things?
Yeah, I don't think it's like I wouldn't say it's one person, but if BAE Systems have contributed hundreds of thousands of pounds across your political party, when you get to power, what BAE Systems only make money from
favors, yeah, of course.
They only make it from war, so they don't want peace.
And so they're actually made for war, yeah, of course.
So, and then you look at other companies, oil companies. Do they want you to like?
No, because they need the oil to manufacture them.
So the people behind there are the people that they're taking the contributions from. So I'll take in America, it's a lot worse where they get paid.
Yeah, no, yeah, of course, yeah, no.
And then you rock up to the parliament, and then you vote for what should be for your constituents, and you're voting very clearly in favour of the people that are giving you the cash to do this.
Yeah, to be fair, they're playing us like a fiddle, but because most people don't know those kind of details, they're not bothered to look out and research. And then others are thinking, oh, well, you know what, it's a big machine. There's nothing you can do to change it. So I'm just gonna go along as long as I can live my life. And then you got the ones that said, yeah, as long as we make money, we don't care. Yeah, so that's the thing.
And that's the thing, like when you said about the thing. So when the NHS was built, the government owned the companies, and what that allowed the government to do through times of profit and loss was keep the economy going. So you could reduce the price of steel, take a hit on the price of steel ultimately, but I can keep paying you, and you keep buying stuff in the economy, and therefore the economy doesn't plunge. The difference is in the private model is that instead of dropping the price, they sack people. So then your profit margin is the more important factor. Humanity.
Yeah, of course it is, because that's
water as well.
Like wealth extraction, transferring the wealth from us to them, and increasingly so. So I said, to be fair, what I've known of like the history that I've seen over the years with like empires and military coups when the government's taken over, what it usually starts with, when they create these systems, they're thinking, oh, we don't want ever to be usurped by anyone else. So we've got to find a way to make sure that we can never be taken over. So they pull up the social mobility ladder. They create regulations that it's all right for them to do what they're doing. But anyone else that could be a potential competitor, they said, nope, you've broken the rules. And because we have their power, we can prevent you, gatekeep, or push you out, or axe you out, to make sure we maintain our base, our privilege. And that's what seems to be thing.
Yeah, well, it's the situation.
It happens in every country.
Yeah. Well, if you look now at the US and China, like the US relies so heavily on China for its production domestically.
Yeah.
But Trump whacking tariffs on it doesn't make China go, oh, actually, we'll lower the
No, they can't because they know they need it anyway. It's all performative. It's performative.
Yeah, China just like, you need us more than we need you.
Yeah, exactly. Because
we'll trading with you, and we'll trade with everybody else, and it will make no difference. You might be the wealthiest economy, but it's not the most essential now.
Yeah, of course.
And I think
they've grown their own domestic markets, haven't they?
It's like
domestic markets, so they don't think, and they own a lot of US. Yeah, so them and Japan, biggest holders of dollars, isn't it? So it's things. So how they. It's all performative. It's all performative.
He's trying to be a tough guy, but like when it kind of like comes down to that type of thing is when you built your economy on the cheap labor of somebody else, and then you're trying to take the economy back. It will take something like 20 years for America to do what China does.
Yeah.
And it won't be doing it at the cost that China does it at. You'll be paying
more
$10 an hour. Whereas in China, you're paying $1 an hour. So if we take an iPhone, we take a standard iPhone, we're probably talking like £900, £1,000 for a standard one. And that they paid whoever it is a couple of dollars an hour to produce that. Well, if you're paying someone in America $10 an hour for that, isn't this now going to be 10 times more expensive?
Yeah, exactly.
To keep the profit
maintain the margins, yeah, because they're not going to want to take a hit under the profit margins, no.
So it's just, it's like you said, it is performative, and it doesn't make, when you sit and like you think about it, you know it doesn't make sense. You know it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they know it as well. That's the thing. So when I say, when you see politicians come with their snake oil playing candy camera, saying, "Oh, we want to help and we're here," we got into it not because of pay, but because we think we can make a change and benefit society. And the thing is, they've been running that same comedy again and again. So I said, surely people that are old enough, and I said, look, you've seen maybe 2-3 governments in your lifetime, and you see it's the same thing. And even when you go back into history, you say, look, the same thing. They go with the prejudices of the normal people, say that they can sort these things out and resolve their issues. They come in and they just enrich themselves, and they run off afterwards and said, oh yes, they're going to family.
I'm a billionaire, but I'm on your side.
Yeah.
I'm a billionaire, but I'm on your side until I don't need you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see the America situation at the moment a bit like the British leaving India and just taking whatever they could as they were leaving, like the Coe Diamond, and like just taking, like extracting as much as they could while they left. And, like I feel that's what America's doing. It's the death of the empire.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
They're
raging against the dying of the light.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because eventually China and India will usurp them.
Yeah, so will Brazil.
It always happens. That's the thing, though. The empires rise only to fall. Nothing lasts forever.
Especially now in the competitive market, where I suppose it was a bit different. The same reasons, but a bit different when the British Empire rocked up on different people's shores, because they were extracting from them rather than putting into it as well. So there's this dual thing of like pumping money in for change, taking at the same time, but whereas the British were taking and probably putting less in, so to speak, apart until like security became a big thing. But like it's the debt thing, isn't it? Kind of like I saw someone had done, apparently the Earth's in like $250 trillion of debt. And they were like, how is there debt when the stuff is free?
Free, exactly. Yeah. It's all fictitious. Yeah, it's fictitious numbers. Of course it is. It said we all live on planet Earth, born here. We don't own an alien race. We haven't loaned anything out of the planet. So the debt is created. And to be fair, it's almost like psychological chains. So they said, we give that mirage that you owe this fictitious money that's not worth the paper it's printed on. And then we get people running like a hamster on a Ferris wheel, chasing cheese until they pack up, and then we replace with someone else.
I don't know if you remember in the 1990s, I think the guy's name was Nick Leeson, and he was a broker, I think, in Hong Kong, who was skimming money off the system. But he wasn't taking money. It wasn't like taking money. He was taking the bits of money that hadn't been rounded up. So like they will deal, like saying 10 decimal places, and then it'd be rounded up to 2 decimal places.
Okay.
And the bits that like get cut off, he was just taking those bits of money. So he wasn't taking anything real, really. He was just taking this like leftover number. He took a lot of money in the end when it all added up.
Adds up.
But what I mean is, like, if he's able to do that to create a wealth from something that isn't technically money, if we're saying that money is like to 2 decimal places, for example, if he's taking off the remaining 8 decimal places, where does that come from? Like, what? Like, how is that possible? Like, I understand why it is possible. You get what I mean? But like, he's taken essentially nothing and made a lot, which I guess is the answer to what is going on. But yeah, when I was a kid, I just remember it being on, and like when they said what he'd done, I was just kind of like, well, but like, if you can chuck that amount of money away, if you're rounding it up and that's not important anymore, but he's taken that bit and made a lot of money from it, then surely that bit that they're chucking away is worth a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Now, by the way, they say you're defrauding the system, innit? So that's why. And then again, if he gets enough, he can buy more political power. Next minute, he said, "I'm taking over." He's not one of us. We can't have that. That's like the serfs running into the palace. We can't have them in here. Yeah, that's the whole idea. As much as the pretense about inclusivity, we want to spread aspiration, we want social mobility. We got the center of social justice, which is a sham. And it said we would change these things. I said, but it doesn't. It gets worse. Every generation since the Second World War, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. Hyperinflation, more asset prices, suppression of wages, lack of real education to give people the real-time skills that they can, sell it to market and get paid well for.
Yeah.
Services. What did the French used to say? They're a nation of cheap shopkeepers. So yeah, that's how it's been. That's how it's become.
I think for the UK, there was two problems. I think for the UK, and that was Thatcher's assault on the unions for the mines, and that being sold off and closed down. I think that removed community, and then from community, we then started to become hyper individual. And I think from when you become about what you do, not about what we do, about what you can do, I think it creates that environment of selfishness of, well, I don't care about you as long as I'm doing all right. As long as me and mine are fine.
Fine, yeah, that's it. I don't care about the wider society.
And again, that's that fractionalization of everything that goes on again then. And then when you talk about like the social justice movement, like if you look at it objectively, it should work. But the reason it doesn't work is because we're told that you've got to look after you. Whereas before,
it's all down to you.
Yeah. Responsibility. It was, we will look after you. You pay your taxes, we make sure you've got healthcare. You pay your taxes, we make sure that you've got like proper policing and proper things, you've got jobs and you've got support and there's ways to deal with it. And then when Thatcher started to get rid of all of that, we went from communities to individuals, where I guess London was probably one of the big ones as well, in like Birmingham and stuff like that. Don't know your neighbours anymore. Whereas when people lived in like mining and steel communities, they would have known.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
And that fractionalization meant I don't have to look out for you next door right now. If I see you, I say hello, but I don't have a connection to you. So I just look after me.
To be fair, there's a lot of, I've noticed over the last 10 years or so, there's a lot of community interest companies, social enterprises, part of Cameron's big society vision. But it's not effective and always hand to mouth. And they give them enough funding to maybe, take over some public services, but never enough to thrive. And then they don't give them the skills where they can, be sustainable, self-sustainable. They don't. So why would you not? It's like, for instance, there's a organization called Impact on Urban Health, and we had a kind of Dad's community group a couple of years ago, or Daddy's Voices, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, we get you this funding, we give you a thing to go cinema trips, couple of retreats where you discuss your mental health and how you can improve your life and positive things, mental well-being." And then they pulled the plug on it, and I said, "Wait a minute, why did you pull the plug when you said there was going to be extra funding if we do well in terms of the key performance indicators and we get the engagement that they require?" But before that, I asked them, I would like to know how you resource funds without having to go, to central government or to guys in St. Thomas Foundation. And they said, why would you ask that? I said, yeah, because I'm interested in, if anything ever went wrong, the rug's not pulled from underneath us. So I'd like access to your public relations, how to source and raise funding privately. And they never did. Yeah, so...
Yeah. And that's part of like the political stuff that we've been talking about, is that I don't see my community thing as a standalone thing. I don't think these types of situations can work like that. It's a bit like the segmentation. I remember when I was a sales and marketing manager, there was this very protective attitude over your customers, but your customers don't come to you for everything. They have to go to somebody else to buy something different. Why not like open and like collaborate in these?
Yeah, collaborate. Yeah, cool.
I see this as a collaboration. In order for my situation to work, for me to be able to earn a living and provide the services that I want to provide, I'm going to need to work with other people that are like-minded, because it's the only way and it's not just that, it's offering not just like the psychological support and the emotional support side. It's like you just said, what happens if a guy that we work with wants to do something similar? Well, we show him how to do it. Like, you teach them skills, you tell them the bits of knowledge that you have, and you share it with someone else who knows something different, and then you get them to join as part of your.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I don't mean like people join my group, so like your thing becomes my thing. I don't mean that. Yours stays yours, but we work together.
Yeah, we get in partnership. Yeah.
So if you've got a guy that's kind of like having emotional difficulties that you don't think you can deal with, then I'll deal with it.
Yeah, of course.
If I've got guys that are having issues with like legal matters, then
of course you do it.
And in that way, you can fund them.
Yeah, services. Yeah, of course. Referrals. Yeah, government do that all the time. Yeah, remember the Brown Initiative, public-private partnership? Gordon Brown used to loves running that one.
And this is how I see these types of things working, is that you have to work in collaboration. I don't have enough skills and knowledge to do everything, but I know that the problem isn't just men are lonely. They don't see themselves as having skills or options, or they don't know how to upskill themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas other groups might know what to do. Like, there is a lot of stuff available online to people now, but I don't know, you might have a gap in your thinking. You might need someone who you could take on to teach how to do social media posts or something. And that way you're fulfilling the hope of a person and giving them something to work towards.
Yeah, of course.
Expanding your own ability to do what you need to do. And I see it as a knock-on effect of the more opportunities that you can provide for those types of people and for groups and other things is better for everyone.
Yeah, it is better for everyone.
Because ultimately our funding comes from the amount of people that we help.
Yeah, of course.
But if I try to hoard the 100 people I work with, well, that's not beneficial to me. Because if you've got 100 people and 50 of your people need my help and 75 need your help,
well, yeah,
best to pass them around.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And they'll get more opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah,
maybe improve their skills and add more skills to their bow.
Yeah. I just think that for the men's situation at the moment, especially with like we talked about earlier, is we need to show that there's opportunity. Because the argument that comes back to is women are getting more opportunities than me. Well, you're not going to get a marketing job because you've only got a college education and the woman's got a master's in marketing. So common sense says you're going to take the person with the most experience in that situation for the job. And that's not a reflection on that person, because I didn't have any qualifications. I had a couple of GCSEs and managed to get onto an access course degree.
Okay.
And pass. So like, I didn't have any qualifications until my degree, really. And so I know that there's options available for people, but it's about getting them to that point where they can use them.
No, because there's a lot of people with all the qualifications and it doesn't translate to employment. And then they get disgruntled and disheartened. And again, they kind of check out and said, oh, what's the point? I was told as long as I studied, got my grades, worked hard, and I'd be fine.
Well, the same for me.
That seems to be a big thing at the moment. People are saying, yeah, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, well, it happened to me twice. So I started uni in 2005. I had to do an extra year, so my degree was 4 years. In 2009, I had a PhD position lined up. And then just before graduation was when the world ran out of money, and it went. So this promise that I had at the start was like, you'd get a 30 grand a year job, kind of like leaving you. Disappeared. I ended up working for the student halls company that I lived in on like 17,000, going from like a funded PhD to, I took the job because the job's more important kind of thing. But you know what I mean? That's when those like problems started to like come in. And for me, for like the college guy that I started, or like the high school person, you can get the work experience, but you might have to do it in a different way. You're not going to get the £70,000 a year marketing position if you've not been there. But if you put in a bit of effort between a couple of people along the lines and, get paid a little bit along the way, you can soon get that experience where you can go.
Of course.
because all of a sudden your portfolio is like, well, I've done this and I've done this and I helped this and I've done this, rather than, well, I've got my GCSEs.
Yeah, of course.
Or in the case of like, I've got a degree in psychology, but there are no psychology jobs. I need to change my skills or transfer my skills.
Yeah, of course. I notice a lot of people, they don't want when they get to a certain age, they don't want to upskill or you know, add to the bow because they're thinking, you know what, I've done all this before and it's wearying and I need to be able to sustain myself financially. So I'm not prepared to take a hit or a cut to have to start again from the bottom on another career ladder. So that's why a lot of people could do that as well.
Yeah, it's also being trapped in that situation as well. If you've had the 30, 40, 50 grand a year job and you've got a house and a car and kids, you need to have
course,
that.
You can't afford it. You're basically trapped. You're saying that they can always upskill or transfer careers, but for a lot of people, it's not feasible because of the responsibilities they have and the outgoings.
Yeah, and that's why I see, like, with that group of men who are angry at women because they feel that, you know, the women are getting opportunities and they're not. Like, I feel that they're the group that needs to be empowered to say, well, you can, but you've got to initiate this. I can't tell you how to do it. Like, my words won't make any change unless you do that change yourself. Like, I could give you all of the knowledge that I have in psychology, which would be great, but unless you put that into action, it doesn't change your life, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't. No, it doesn't change your life. Remember, you can do all that because when I was at the YMCA, it used to be like that. I used to certain residents, I said, look, this is how you get, you know, independent living and maybe one day get nominated for your own social housing. But I said, these are the kind of things you have to do, you know, and kind of engage with the courses that they're having there, come to the meetings, show that you're doing some kind of study, preparing yourself to move out, you know, maybe get a little part-time job, things like that. And they said you might get nominated and like, oh yes, it's true. And I must have seen in that time about over 70 people. Only 2 people followed the plan that we laid out together, and they're the ones that ended up with their own place. And I thought, but I showed all of this, and then some of them were moaning. I said, how comes they think? I said, yeah, because they stuck to the plan and they done what they say they're gonna do. So I said, why would you be hateful and despise them over that? You was given the same information and you didn't act upon it.
Yeah.
So that's what politicians capitalize on as well. And the gender identity, the gender politics, they capitalize on it. I said, well, you know, women were disadvantaged for centuries. And now it's their turn to reap the benefits of what you've been getting all these years. And people said, oh, why is that? Because I'm out of pocket. I'm struggling now. And said, so he said, what's going to happen to me? And then obviously some, especially the feminists, turned around and said, well, you deserve it because you're part of the patriarchy and for the historic injustices you've done to our gender. And then you get the bucking of heads and the contention and these kind of gender wars online.
But again, that comes down for me. It's that same thing again. It's these people. It's these people like shouting at the ends that don't reflect the rest of the people in the middle. Like, I've worked for plenty of my managers have been female. It makes no difference to my life. The job doesn't change. Just whoever's leading it. Like, I've worked under some incredible women and I've worked under some terrible men. It doesn't make a difference about what they are. It's about how they are and how they act.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's character though. It's character because
and I think it's
people they get caught up with the gender thing when a lot of time it's just the character flaws or the personality clashes and they think, you know what, your face doesn't fit, your values don't fit this kind of stuff. We'll have to move you on. And
it's that easy thing again, isn't it? It's easy to have a target. It's easy to say, well, that's
for that reason.
It's like you said about the guys that you were working with. You gave them an actionable plan to follow and to execute, and the ones that followed it achieved, and the other ones who were just expecting didn't get. And I think there's that entitlement, and this isn't just at men. I mean, the gender is like that level of entitlement that they should get because of who they are.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's that needs to go. Is that like you only get something by putting the effort in, and for me, the only way you can get out of that effort is collaboration. One person does not hold the thing. That's why when you see Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate telling men how to be men, I just think that's absolutely mental because you're looking at manhood from one point of view.
Yeah, of course. And it's
Do
not
I know
like
what it means to be a
there's
man?
no one path to financial freedom or
Do I
being
know what it means to be a
popular.
man? No. But what guides me is my morals, my ethics, and my empathy. That's what guides me for being a man. But somebody else might see it a different way. And it's not for me to say, this is how you be a man. All I say is, this is how you can be a man. Like, you can be happy. To be an incel seems to be very angry. And that seems very counterproductive for the thing that you actually want. So you can call me a beta cook.
More and more of these types are becoming voluntary celibates because obviously the false allegations, you know, domestic abuse, obviously sexual assault. So they're thinking, oh, if they're lying on me, thing like that, why even bother them? Then I've seen women pillowing them now. I said, oh, men are not approaching us. They don't want to be interested. And that's when I noticed the insults, like the incel come out. Yeah, it was a serious thing.
I think there's like a two-tier thing, kind of like when you look at the incels, like as part of like my daily thing is that I've got like RSS feeds into a lot of their like forums and stuff, and like stuff that they talk about, like some of it is like horrific if you've got any sort of like empathy for people. But it all follows the same sort of thing of they want a relationship or they want this closeness, but they set up so much exclusionary criteria for
exactly.
That's the barrier. It's not because it's been enforced on them. It's a chosen set of rules that they believe puts them in place. So, like, if a woman's married or had kids, then they're off the list. If a woman has touch, then they're off the list. Well, all of a sudden, your like chances of meeting people has gone from very
of course, it's very narrow. Small catchment area, of course.
And if you're all in that very narrow category, that means that all 100 of you are chasing one woman. Now you're complaining because she's picking the one that's the best out of that group. You know what I mean? So you're creating the thing that you hate.
Of course, but like you said, but the same goes for a lot of the female that said that the women that are like, oh well, you know, they have to be earning a certain amount of money, especially this American thing about 6 figures, 6 feet and 6 inches. So you're saying all that, and then you expect them to be monogamous as well, empathetic, emotionally intelligent. So I said, you know how rare that is. You're talking about maybe the top 5 to 1%, as they say. So I said, if you're all thing with that and compete, then again you'll have your heart broken, and you're rejecting good average Joes that might make you happier. And you might get along better personality-wise.
For me,
it's both. It happens to both genders, to be fair.
Yeah, it is. I think the thing is that this is more of a cultural thing because living abroad, like I've lived in Spain and stuff, that there's a different attitude to how like women are there. But I think the thing is when you look at other countries, they have a different attitude about how these things work. So in Spain, the focus is on more of the emotional support that you get. Poland is another one that's very like built around kind of like, well, it's not about money, it's about what you can offer me emotionally. And I think it's only kind of like the English speaking countries that have this hyper competitive side of it. I think that when you look at kind of like, I don't know enough about New Zealand and kind of like Australia and stuff, but when you look at us and the US, we become very individualized, whereas when you look at other countries, they got a completely different focus, and you don't see that. And I don't see that on the message boards either. You see the odd people from kind of like other countries, but I would say 90% is America, 10% is the UK. Well, that was a good mass, but and then a tiny fraction of other people spattered around the world. It just seems to be centered on, you're right, it is centered around the wealth, and these guys don't think that they're anywhere near this thing. But then there's this, have you seen the Bo Burnham? He did a song called Lower Your Expectations. And I just think that is the perfect song everyone needs to listen to, because he just resets how a relationship is. It's like, you can have all these ideals, but it doesn't mean anything. Like,
I think that's just a human thing. I don't think that's really based on gender. Everyone has their prerequisites and what they want, and then it's what they've managed to find. Sometimes doesn't always marry up to the expectations, and I think that's just a human thing. I don't even think that's a gender.
Not at all. So if we're talking like an ideal, so mine would be dark-haired, probably Latin, or but my girlfriends have predominantly been white and blonde.
Yeah, geez. There you go. There you go.
And that's not what I was looking for. If you're telling me my ideal, like it would be dark hair, dark eyes, but I dated a Lithuanian girl who couldn't have been any blonder if she tried. So, and that's the thing that like they don't understand is they see rejection as this harmful thing, but rejection just allows you to kind of like, okay, well that didn't work. Like it's not the end of it.
Fun enough you say that. You see how you say that? I had a friend once that was a bit like that when we used to go sixth form. He wasn't getting much, attention from the opposite sex. I said, look, have you ever thought that sometimes it's not about you? It might be with their headspace. Yeah, because I said there's some girls that said, look, over the years that we've kind of had to chase them and caught them, and he's turned around and said, oh, it's later down the line. I said, oh, actually, let me give you a chance. And then they said, oh, you know what? Being with you is better than my previous partner. So I said, yeah, remember, some people's decision making is all right. We don't always make the best decisions.
We don't. We make terrible decisions. I've made enough of them. But the difference is that I think the thing is, not everyone's going to fancy you, and that person might be attracted to you in a different setting.
Exactly.
Just at that time, it's not happening.
It's not going to happen. But I always wondered, I learned that from a teenager. So when I see middle-aged men, still don't recognize that. And they've got, like you said, these kind of rigid, this is what you need to be able to think. I said, no, because I gave an example. There was a fella that I used to box with. And he was like, well built. He had plaits, cane rolled, had a nice car, conventionally handsome. And I said, he tried to get a Brazilian lady that worked, fun enough, in the gym in the YMCA, and she went out with a guy that looked like skateboarder. Wore
just like a nut average.
The Converse trainers. He wore his cap back to front, long hair, shaggy beards, in good shape, but not as big or as charismatic on the surface as this guy, because he'd done a bit of modeling as well on the side and acting, and some personal training to some low-level celebrities. And he couldn't believe why she wasn't interested in him. And I said, have you ever thought maybe because she thinks you're too much into yourself? And she wants someone more understated. And the personality, she don't really like your personality because you're a bit too show business. He found it odd. But he said, yeah, but look at me and look at him. He said, if it was down to that level, do you know how much people when they have a partner ever?
Yeah.
That women see things with a bit more nuance and there's more levels to it than, oh, I see it, I like it, I buy it. It's not like that. You must really said, if you don't know that at this age, there's something wrong.
1950s, then he's probably right. But I think the difference is that, like, I guess, like, you dated people because of how attractive they were and then found that you had absolutely zero in common with them other than the fact that you just found them attractive. And that's kind of like the lot. And I think the thing is, as you get kind of like older, you want different stuff, don't you? Like, you want someone that you can like actually depend on rather than like caller or they call and like not returning. I've done enough of that, not returning people's calls. Like,
seriously, there you go. Yeah, but you understand that. You understand that, and you, like you said, because you're empathetic, you said, you know what, I've done, things that are questionable and certain misdeeds and mistreated or ghosted people. So this is basically a bit of karma. They don't see it like that. It's end of the world when it's them. But then when they can't dish out that kind of medicine, they don't like it. They don't like it when it returns, when it's their turn.
Yeah.
So to be fair, you get that. It's like conscious hypocrisy and unconscious hypocrisy. And then people don't want to face up to that. So look, maybe it's a bit of karma. You just have to accept it. And just move on. There's always other people.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing worse than when you do like someone and they don't like you back, because there is that there's that pain. But often it's because you've idealized that person. You've made up who they are in your head. And then when they've rejected you, they've not rejected you. They've rejected the version that you've created.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a reflection of you, but you're upset because of the image that you've created in your head about how that would play out, kind of thing. I think that's the thing that hurts. And it does hurt when you miss someone, kind of thing. I'm not saying.
Yeah, when I was younger, though, I never, because of maybe it's because I had different levels of self-esteem, I never thought that. I just think, they made a bad decision. I always felt I was, handsome and nice, and said, yeah. So I maybe was a bit delusional because I said, yeah, that never used to be water for ducks back. And it was to someone to say, no, I said, it's not the end of the world. There's more. or maybe down the line they might change their mind. That's how I used to be. But some people, the way they're built mentally, they internalize and think, oh, I'm so terrible, or I must be so ugly, or what's wrong with me? And why did they like them instead? I never saw it like that. I just think they've missed an opportunity of a lifetime. Well, yeah, that's how I was in my head. So it's big.
But that's it.
Everyone's like that.
But that's kind of like it seemed like having that kind of confidence and stuff like it is fine, but also recognizing that the rejection sucks and it hurts you, but it doesn't end you. You just carry on. You just go back to the nightclub. I think that's one of the big things is like kind of like having to. I think because of like dating apps, there's that detachment. Like I remember nothing worse than like find like you're in a club and you see someone, you're like, oh, she's really attractive, and then you make the walk towards her, and then her friends spot you, and then her friends are like giving you the eye up and down about whether you're allowed to like talk to her or not, and then you've got that thing about like what's the first thing that you kind of say, and like if you mess it up, like, and everyone's looking at you at this point, but now you can just ignore text messages. You can't ignore someone absolutely like giving you the eye of like, in front of a bar full of people.
It's true.
They won't know that hurt, mate.
Yeah, of course.
I've really enjoyed like chatting with you, but I'll let you get back to your family. Like I say, you should get a link after this to the video in my Google Drive. If you don't, I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be very good. Yeah, no, obviously, remember, I always plug you in as well. When I do anything with a like you see over the YouTube, I plug in your work and your Instagram handle into the description. So you get people that will come and visit what you and see what you're doing as well.
I'll do the same. I'll be like, now that I'm back on it, I'll be getting more into that like cross thing. And if you've got any other people that like interested in like debating about some of this stuff as well, I'd be interested.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, not to be because you've seen some of the other videos I've done. Sometimes there's 5, 6 of us.
Yeah,
women.
Because yours varies quite a bit in sort of like content wise as well. Like we've been talking politics for like an hour of this, like this chat type thing. And I noticed in yours that yours is like not necessarily focused on like one specific topic as such. It's on like topics related to the thing. Whereas I say some content creators, it's kind of like that topic and that topic alone. So yeah, be happy for a joint debate or speaking with anyone like.
Yeah, definitely.
Got cramp now. But yeah, mate, I've enjoyed it. Great to see you again as well.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know when you want to do the next one, because I know you said you want to do something more regular.
Yeah, I'll put it down in paper and give you kind of like a more idea of what kind of like in mind for it, as having it as a bit more of like a series to kind of like people to like refer to, like have it as like I don't know, like a 6-part like topic about different things to do with with like being men type of things, like dating advice and like what we just talked about, like things that happen to us in dating.
Yeah,
kind of like try and get rid of that, like one girl saying no isn't 100 girls saying no isn't the end of the world. Like
exactly. Yeah, it's not. You know, it's not. It's true. We know that, but some people, as you know, they internalize.
But I think that, like for me, for what like my idea for it is, it's showing people that it happens to them, it happens to everyone. Everyone survives, and
the end of the world.
Life goes on, like
life goes on.
Yeah. So I'll put it down a bit in like in kind of like a bit more thing, and like kind of like a mix of it being like what we just had, like a conversation, some stuff about like serious stuff about the facts, and just some laughs and jokes about it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that human element always is more relatable.
Plus, I've got some absolutely terrible stories. I've got terrible stories that will relate to people as well. So if you're interested in doing something like that,
yeah, of course, that's fine. I'll be up for that.
Right, thanks very much, man. Good to see you. I'll let you get back to the family. See you soon, buddy.
Bye.